Our administration has also proceeded with a deepened reform in our area to facilitate investment and foreign trade, and we have realized a general balance of payments. We have also supported the efforts of our country to realize the moderately prosperous society in all aspects. Last year, we have coordinated COVID-19 fight and also the socio-economic development. We have stabilized major indicators within the range that is rational. And the foreign exchange market in China is, in general, very stable. RMB is running within a rational range. And the balance sheet is also in a very good status. We also have very good flow of the capital across the borders. When we look at the data of the settlement and sales of foreign exchange, last year, calculated in US dollars, the settlement is $2.5 trillion US dollars, then the sales $2.2 trillion, and the surplus of 270 billion in RMB. Settlement 16.5 trillion, and the sales 14 trillion. Surplus 1.7 trillion. When we look at the cross-border receipts and payments by banks for customers, the receipts in US dollars 6 trillion, and the payment 5.6 trillion. The surplus is 350 billion in RMB. Cross-border receipts 39 trillion. Payment 36.7 trillion. And the surplus is 2.2 trillion RMB. Last year, we have concluded and also analyzed the characteristics. I'd like to give you the briefing. First of all, the foreign-related trade is very stable. We have an orderly flow of the cross-border capital. Last year, for the bank's foreign exchange settlement and sales, in total, we have a 4.9 trillion US dollars. And the total number of the cross-border receipts and payment by banks for customers is 11.7 trillion dollars. That is the result of China's successful battle against the COVID-19 and its recovery of the economy. Trading goods and all types of financing activities have maintained a very good momentum of activity. So that is the first character about the foreign-related activities for trade. The second character is the selling rate, which is very stable. Cross-border financing willingness is also very stable. Last year, when we look at the selling rate, which is an indicator to see people's willingness to buy the foreign exchange, the total volume of their purchase from the bank against their expenditure in foreign exchange, the figure, namely the selling rate, is 63.6%. That is about the same level of 2020. And let's look at the willingness of the foreign exchange financing. This is also very stable. By the end of last year, the balance of domestic foreign exchange loans is $355 billion, which has registered an increase compared to the previous period of the year. And the cross-border balance of domestic foreign exchange loans is $132 billion. Compared to the end of 2019, that is about the same level. So you can see that for the customers, they have a very stable selling rate. So their willingness of the foreign exchange financing is also very stable. After talking about the selling rate, we'll see the settled rate, which has a moderate growth. We have a moderate rise in the balance of domestic foreign exchange deposits. up by 1.4 percentage points compared to the end of 2020. And this figure comes from the proportion of the total volume of foreign exchange sold by the customers to the banks against all their revenue in foreign exchange. So there's a 1.4 percentage points increase year on year. So that is a very moderate increase. When we look at the end of last year, market entities, including the enterprises, their balance of deposits is $675.9 billion, a significant increase compared to the previous year. This means that enterprises, they have very wisely used their foreign exchange. Some have used their foreign exchange, some others have put their foreign currencies into the bank. So after talking about the first three characters, now we come to the fourth. The hedging rate has also a very stable growth. Enterprises have a stronger risk-neutral awareness. For example, they have used the foreign exchange derivatives like the forward letters of credit, etc. The increase of the total hedging ratio is 56.9%, which is higher than the growth rate of the settlement and sales of the foreign exchange increase rate. Enterprises, they have stronger willingness and ability to avoid risks, and they have greater management mentalities. The fifth character, foreign exchange reserve balance is in general stable. By the end of last year, the foreign exchange reserve balance is $3.2 trillion. Compared to the end of 2020, there is an increase of 1 percentage point. Last year, for the increase of the foreign exchange reserve is impacted by the value changes of the asset and also by the conversion of exchange rate. This year, considering the external environment, we think it will continue to be complicated and fluctuating. There are still lots of uncertainties in the international world. So our administration will continue to work under the Xi Jinping thought and apply the results of the conference, like the 19th CPC Congress and also the plenary sessions, as well as the Central Conference on Economic Work. We will put the priority on the guarantee of stability and establish the new paradigm for development, deepen the reform in the foreign exchange sector, and support the stability of the macro economy in the country, and also to safeguard the good order in the sector, contribute to the 6 guarantees and 6 stability areas. So with real efforts, we can embrace the opening of the 20th CPC Congress. That is all for my briefing part. Now the floor is open for your questions. So now, friends of the media, you're free to ask your questions. Please first identify yourself. Thank you. I'm from CCTV. For last year, the foreign exchange market in China, what are the characteristics and what are the major trends of changes? And what is your prediction for this year? Thank you very much for this question. For 2021, as is mentioned just now, COVID-19 is still raging the whole world and is impacting on the world economic recovery. A lot of major economies, they are making a turn in their economic policies. So we can see there are a lot of uncertainties in the external market. Facing that, the domestic foreign exchange market in China is very stable. RMB exchange rate is resilient and robust. Cross-border capital flow is in an orderly manner. Let's look at the payment balance. It's also very rational. We have several characteristics for you to see. First of all, let's look at the exchange rate of RMB against the US dollars. We have the two-way volatility, and you can see the expected rate is very stable. For last year, throughout the year, RMB against the US, the at-site exchange rate is 2.6%, which is much more stable than the other currencies' exchange rate against the US dollars. And in different areas, we have maintained two-way volatility. For the first 5 months of last year, RMB exchange rate has appreciated by 0.8%, and later on there is a depreciation of 0.6%. Since October until the end of last year, there's an appreciation of 1.4%. By the end of last year, the exchange rate of RMB against the US dollars is at a level of 6.37. When you look at the highest point and also the lowest point, then you can see a moderate scissor gap. When we look at the change and the fluctuations in different periods of the time of the whole year, different features can be witnessed. It's only the result mainly of the supply and demand in the exchange market of the whole world. And there are multiple elements contributing to that result. For the forwards and options of the bank, some professional indicators can be used to evaluate the expectations of the market. So for those indicators, the result is very stable. So that is the first characteristic about last year's exchange rate. Second, for the financing and investment, the fiscal economy, the real economy activities, they have encouraged inflow of the foreign capital throughout the year of 2021. Major indicators have been published in recent days. We have noticed that import and exporting goods in China maintained a very high level of surplus calculated in US dollars. Last year, an increase of 30%. This has shown that against the background of COVID-19, supply chain and industrial manufacturing chain in China are still holding very strong advantages. And last year, for the enterprises, their settlement and sales surplus concerning the trading goods represent 95% of the total sales and settlement figure, with a real number of $339.5 billion. This is a rather high level at historical record. This has shown to us that we have very good potential, and also we have a very strong attraction to the foreign investors. And the foreign investors, they have increased their holdings of the domestic securities and bonds. When we look at the increase of their holdings of the bonds, more than 100 billion US dollars, RMB has become an important asset for the foreign investors to hold. When we look at the trade in goods and also the investment in the real economy, this is a major impetus for the inflow of the foreign exchange. And the third characteristic, since we have the inflow of the capital, where did that go? So we can see the third characteristics. The private investors, they are holding more capital now in foreign exchange. When we look at the balance sheet, the surplus of the current account, and also with the increasing inflow of the foreign exchange, our outbound investment by the private sectors have also increased. For the first 3 quarters, private investors overseas have an investment overseas of 400 of $480 billion. The direct investments by private enterprises overseas is $85.4 billion. Apart from the investments in securities and also the direct investment, there are also other types of investments, like deposits, loans, etc. That has also exceeded $310 billion. So you can see that our private investors investing overseas, they have sufficient possession of the foreign exchange. In the non-governmental sectors, there's inflow and outflow and a balance of payments. This is an automatic balancing situation. So for 2021, throughout the whole year, the foreign exchange market and also the balance of payment, there are three major characteristics. So you can see that where's the origin and how they are applied. When we look at the new year, 2022, we can consider the topic from two sides. First of all, domestic and international environment will surely have an impact on the foreign exchange market. First of all, externally, if the world economy can start to recover, then the cross-border capital flow in China and out of China can be further stabilized in the future. Uncertainties brought by COVID-19 will continue to exist, but we can also analyze a little bit. The world economy can gradually recover from the impact of COVID-19. That would be a major trend. The fiscal policy and financial policies are also making readjustment to the new cases. This can drive the growth of the trade in services and goods, etc., and also in investment. This renormalization of the situation can help to stabilize the foreign exchange market in China. So considering the external impacts, that is my judgment. And secondly, from the domestic point of view, the fundamentals of China's economy remain unchanged, and they are very stable. That will continue to support the robust and stable development of the foreign exchange market in China. To this point, we will continue to coordinate COVID-19 battle and socioeconomic development in the country. And we also have multiple sectors contributing to the same ambition. The financial market will remain open in a two-way manner and continue with the reform. All those efforts and the philosophy of guidance will continue to create a very good policy environment for the balance of the flow. The flexibility and two-way fluctuations of the RMB will continue to play a positive role in supporting the automatic stabilization of the balance of payment. Our conclusion from the previous analysis is that in 2021, we can expect to see a very stable and more balanced foreign exchange market in China. That is my answer to your question. Thank you. I'm from the Phoenix Media. We know against the background of COVID-19, we have a rising surplus of trading goods. This means that we also have a rising surplus in the current account. What is your prediction on the future development of the current account? Thank you very much for this question. I believe that your observation is very important. When we look at the analysis of the balance of payments and cross-border flow, the current account is a very important point of observation. First of all, let's look back. Since the outbreak of COVID-19, the current account of China has changed a lot. This year, we will conclude from the past experience and try to study the past experiences. Last year, the surplus of the current account represents 1.9% of the GDP. For the first 3 quarters, the proportion is 1.5%. So we have also calculated that figure for the whole year is about 2%. That is within a rational range according to international standard. And from this figure, you can see that the operation of the current account in China is very stable within a rational range of the surplus. We believe that there are 2 explanations. First of all, the control of COVID-19 and socioeconomic recovery had made a lot of progress. And secondly, in recent years, China is promoting the transformation and upgrading of the trade and also the high-quality development. And now our efforts are yielding results. You can see the positive information from the current account. For trading goods, if you enter into details, the surplus is a sign of our advantages in the industrial manufacturing trade and supply chain against the background of COVID-19. And moreover, you can also see that our structure of the trade with reform to improve the quality, the effort is also paying off. And we are diversifying the structure of the trade. This has helped us to expand our market share internationally, and we have also contributed to the recovery of other countries' economy. America and also Europe remain our major trading partners. In the recent 2 years, the average trading volume has increased by 19% and 24% compared to the level of 2019, respectively. We take the number from 2019 because we consider that as a normal level. So an increase of 19% and 24% respectively for the trade with Europe and America. And our trade with other entities and countries with ASEAN and Latin America has also increased by 22% and 21% respectively. Despite the challenge from COVID-19, our trading partners are diversified, and our exported goods, we have also upgraded the structure of the goods. Last year, the mechanics and machineries exported year-on-year increased by 29%. That increase rate compared to the previous year, up by 23%. High-tech technology exports up by 20 percentage points. Cross-border e-commerce and other new forms of trade have also become a new pillar in driving the increase of the foreign trade. From 2020 to 2021, the online shopping receipts and payments increased by 79% compared to the level of 2019. When we look at the third point for the trading goods, the activity of our market entities have been strengthened. For the total number of enterprises which have a settlement and sales figure foreign exchange, last year the number reached 500,000. That is a significant increase compared to the previous year, with an increase of more than 8,000 units of enterprises. So that is another important driving force. So that is my analysis about the side of the trading goods. What about the trading services? China has been severely impacted by COVID-19 in the past. In the past, we have a rather high level of deficit in trading services, and nowadays we have narrowed down that deficit. trading services related to manufacturing. In recent years, has narrowed down by 53 percentage points compared to the level of 2019. The current level is about 120 billion US dollars, mainly because the expenditure in tourism and also in foreign studies has significantly dropped. And some highlights. With the information technology development and upgrading of the industries, as well as the development of manufacturing, the trading services and goods have registered a moderate surplus. In 2019 and 2020, we have observed only deficits. But last year, for the trading services related to manufacturing, for example, the production, transfer, insurance, computers, the productive services in 2021, they have a moderate surplus. When we look at the future development of a current account, it will go back to the normal level gradually, and according to our prediction, it will fall into the rational range. I'd like to add up some more explanation to this point. COVID-19 will have a smaller blow to the sector in the future, and we believe that in the future the foreign exchange market would be more sustainable and balanced. So it means it can be further stabilized. And expenditures related to foreign trips and foreign studies can gradually go back to the normal level. And some highlights. We have a very huge sector of manufacturing. That is the advantage of our country, and we will also continue to upgrade the manufacturing sectors and also to proceed with the supply side structural reform. In the future, our country's position in the world manufacturing system will continue to grow. All those supportive elements will continue to play an important role, and that is my side of prediction about the future development. Thank you. Now from the paper, it is said that this year the Federal Reserve of the U.S. will continue to significantly increase the interest rate. What reaction will you take? What tools will you apply this year to cope with that? Just now, we have mentioned that topic. Those are very important elements to consider. Currently, when we look at the developed economies, especially the U.S., the monetary policy is going back to the normal stage. When we look at the case, we also pondering on that topic because they are tightening. We can also look back to the past. What has happened during the last round of tightening? There is a high pressure of outflow. So this time, if there's another round of similar actions, what will be our reactions? So we can do some comparison between the previous round and this coming round. This is also part of our daily job. We have analyzed the situation. According to the result of our studies and comparison, what is the possible impact from this round of readjustment? Because we have already the similar experience in the past, we have some references. Last year, for the last round of the changes of their monetary policy. This year, we also have some new circumstances because we have stronger advantages with our manufacturing system. We are gradually opening up the financial markets. We have a better system and mechanism for the formulation of the exchange rate of the RMB. So we believe that we can better cope with the changes in the external environment. That is our preliminary conclusion. And in this case, I also could share with you our explanations for that. Let's look at the recent development. The foreign exchange held by the Chinese enterprises. What's the origin? What's the source of the foreign exchange held by those enterprises? Where did the money come from? Mainly from their exportation. They sell their products to overseas and they gain the foreign exchange. In recent years, we have upgraded the manufacturing system. Against the background of COVID-19, this upgrading of the system has made our efforts pay off, and we have greater momentum of exportation. And exportation is a major reason for the increase of foreign exchange flowing into our country. We have, for example, 160 billion RMB, US dollars of increase of the foreign exchange, mainly thanks to the increase of exportation. We also have the automatic regulation of the market. The second reason is that our financial market is open even wider to the external world. RMB has become more attractive to the foreign investors. RMB has become an important element and channel for the investors overseas. There are also some reasons behind this increasing willingness of foreign investors to invest in RMB. First of all, we have a rather rapid growth rate. In 2017, when we have decided to enlarge the financial market, since 2018 to 2021, the added holdings of foreign investors of capital and equity in RMB has an average annual increase rate of 34%, and the total volume of increase is 700 billion US dollars. And the second reason is the high potential. We have mentioned this several times. The foreign holdings has a relatively small proportion in the total foreign exchange reserve. So in the future, it has a high potential to grow. And the third reason is that high value of investment. First of all, we will not touch upon that yield part. We just look at the price of the asset and its performance of the yield compared to the other economies. The relevance is very low. It means that when you do the international investment, RMB is a very good option for you to diversify your investment and to avoid risks. That is why I say that it has a very good performance and high value. After the previous round of the tightening policy of the external environment, we have realized the above-mentioned changes. And for the developed economies, this round they're about to do another round of quantitative easing. For the cross-border financing and loans, they have limited inflow. In the future, of course, the outflow will also be limited in their impact. Last round of policy changes we have experienced a high pressure of deleveraging, but this time we believe that pressure for deleveraging would be much smaller. And last time, we were also under expectation of appreciation of the RMB against the previous round of quantitative easing. Higher expectations for the RMB appreciation. Enterprises have borrowed money at a relatively low price at the end of the quantitative easing, and the money would be paid back in a huge quantity, and that means a huge outflow of the foreign exchange. During that round of quantitative easing, exchange rates remained rather stable. For this year, for Q2, sorry, for last year in Q2, cross-border loans and financing increased by 8% only, which is lower than the level during the previous round of quantitative easing between 2009 and 2013, where we have witnessed 21% of average annual increase rate. And last year in Q2, that was only 8%. And by the second half of last year, Federal Reserve for its policy change, the market has already started the guessing. And I believe that in the future, against this background, our pressure would be limited. And third, the flexibility of RMB has been strengthened. The maturity of the foreign exchange market has also been increased, so we can be better adapted to the exchanges of the external environment. I can give you a set of figures. From 2018 to 2021, after the previous round of quantitative easing, the volatility rate on the daily basis of RMB is 3.9. And for the period of 2014 to 2015, and the one-year volatility of RMB to US dollars is 2.2. So today we have stronger flexibility and stronger volatility. This means that we have the capacity today to better reflect the changes in the international market and also to reflect the changes in the supply and demand relations. It can help to further stabilize the market expectations and make sure that our transactions can be more balanced and stabilized. So for this coming round of QE, the possible impacts we have made, those above analysis, and another prediction. The spillover effect of this round of increase of interest rates of Federal Reserve would be smaller than the previous round. Compared to the previous round, today the economies in developed countries, they are more synchronized. They have put the focus on the inflation and job creation, etc. For all those topics, we can see that the Federal Reserve has attached importance to those topics, and same as the whole rest of the world, we can accordingly make the readjustments. The spillover effects have been partly released. So this time, the spillover effects would be smaller than the previous rounds. And domestically, we have rather strong fundamentals of the economy. The balance of payment is stable. Current account also has a stable status of the surplus, we also have sufficient foreign exchange reserve. It can play a very good role of stabilizer. After talking so much about this topic, very optimistically, we have delivered such information, but of course, we will coordinate the security and also the development to balance the two sides of the equation, and we will continue to analyze the optimistic elements for the uncertain elements. We will not ignore them. We will keep them in mind, and always stability is our top priority, and we will seek stable progress. Our administration for years has applied this macro prudence and micro management. We have the dual policy, and we're always ready to cope with any emergencies and changes in the market. So that is my answer to your question. Thank you. I'm from the China Review. According to some points of view, 2022, we will have a different surplus in the foreign exchange settlement and sales. What is your comment? I would like to start with the case of 2021. In 2021, the balance of payment, we only released the data for the previous 3 quarters, but for Q4, we also have some preliminary analysis. Just now, we have mentioned that from the point of view of the current account for the previous 3 quarters, the surplus of the current account represents 1.5% of the GDP. And in total, the number is $196.3 billion. That current account surplus is in a rational range and is very stable. For the first 3 quarters, when we look at the financial account, there is a moderate surplus, $41.8 billion for the financial account surplus. So that is the performance for the first 3 quarters and basically for the whole year of 2021. And what about my comments on this? First of all, there's greater inflow of capital. This means foreign investors, they have confidence and optimism about China's foreign exchange market. For this kind of long-term investment, because they are willing to invest, this has shown to us that they have confidence in our long-term economic growth. They would like to hold our RMB assets because the asset has its value and performance and attractivity. For the balance of payment, there's the inflow and outflow, the settlement and sales. Domestic investors, they are doing the diversification of their asset structure. In recent years, they are doing the readjustment. We have also mentioned the private sector's outbound investment. When we look at the balance sheet, the financial account in the first 3 quarters of last year, $41.8 billion of surplus, as we mentioned. Transactions of the foreign exchange reserve is also very stable, and the average level of the foreign exchange reserve is $3.2 trillion. For the new year 2022, we're about to continue with this main structure. And for 2022, I've already touched upon the basic aspects of this year when I was answering to the previous several questions, so I will not repeat that. When we look at this question, as is mentioned repeatedly in the past, we can look at some indicators like the current account, financial account. When you talk about the two surplus, you take or you pick out the financial account. So I agree with your judgment. So that's all, okay? Next question, please. Thank you. I'm from the Fengmian News. What is your work in serving the small and micro enterprises, and what are the new moves of your administration in this year? Thank you very much for this very important question. China's small and micro enterprises, they have a very special status in China because they have contributed to 80% of creation of jobs and 60% of the GDP and 50% of the fiscal revenue. That's why the State Council and the CPC Central Committee have attached such great importance to the development of them. Our administration in last year has diligently followed the guidance of the government and the CPC. We have served the people and also started the deregulation and improved our services to benefit those small and micro enterprises. Small and micro enterprises, the SMEs in this case, they are an important part of our work. For the enterprises, which has a total volume of less than $1 million of settlements and sales of foreign exchange. They have a total number of 6.5 million. They are huge in number, and usually the transaction volume is not very huge. And their activities of settlement of sales are largely distributed. So today I'd like to brief you several endeavors we have taken to serve them. First of all, to serve the SMEs, we have helped them to better cope with the foreign exchange rate related risks. First of all, with the online platform or with offline programs, we have shared information with those enterprises to build up this awareness of risk neutral among the enterprises and entrepreneurs. We have introduced the foreign exchange derivatives to them so that they can better cope with the volatility of the foreign exchange rate, and they can have a greater resilience to that. And second, we have modified the indicators for the assessment. We have improved our services to the small and micro enterprises. We have organized the competitions. We also have some mechanisms in place to encourage them. We also invite banks, local banks, to better their services to the small and micro enterprises. The credit grants and guarantee services have also been increased so that enterprises, when asking for the hedging, they can pay less volume of a guarantee. We also offer the risk avoidance service at a lower cost. You know that the foreign exchange trade center, they have reduced the transaction fee for those enterprises by half. When we look at the whole year, the hedging ratio has been up by 4.6 percentage points. More small and micro enterprises are engaged in the hedging ratio. For those enterprises newly engaged, they have a greater proportion. This is a very good sign because it's very important for people to have a first try of this service. Once you know that it's something beneficial to your enterprise, then you are more mobilized to repeat that experience in the future. So in your daily operation, you will be less impacted by the fluctuations in the foreign exchange rate. So for those enterprises trying out the hedging for the first time, they can benefit from more supportive policies from the banks. So that is one important part of our services to the small and micro enterprises. Second work we have taken is to use the attention for the small and micro enterprises to get the financing. Since 2019, we have already established a platform for the cross-border financing. Governments, insurers, bankers, and enterprises, they can share information on this platform. We have end-to-end verification mechanism in place. And during this process, we also have 5 scenarios for financing and 2 facilitation scenarios. All those scenarios in 2021, by the end of the year, have completed cross-border financing by more than $100 billion, facilitation activities with a volume of more than $500 billion. For a lot of small enterprises engaged in foreign trade, they have reduced the costs and also lowered the risks. All those endeavors have also encouraged the enterprises to do more loans. The 5 scenarios cross-border credit grant, logistic financing settlement, and the China-Europe Expressway financing. For example, you can find this on the internet on the platform. If you would like to do this kind of trade, you can first go to the website to see whether you are qualified for those supportive policy. And since it's an official website, you know that all the information can be trusted. Those information and this kind of platform are very important for the small and micro enterprises in China. So that is how we have eased the tension for small and micro enterprises to get financing. And we have also enlarged the piloting areas for the external loans. For the qualified enterprises, they are invited to increase their borrowing of the foreign money. Third effort, we support new forms of business. You know that there are new types of business forms, for example, the cross-border e-commerce, and most of the market entities doing this kind of trade are in small scale. They are trading in very small volume but very high frequencies. Cross-border financial institutions are playing out their own advantages. Throughout the whole year, we have settled 1.8 billion pieces of transactions with a total volume of trading of $34.8 billion. For this year, all those policies would be continued on a daily basis. For example, we will continue to support small and micro enterprises to control the risks and avoid the foreign exchange market-related risks. We can also negotiate and collaborate with the banking system, third-party and the local government to lower the risks and costs of the small and micro enterprises so that we can attract more small enterprises to use the derivatives. One important thing is that during their operation, we have to get them out of the concerns about the financing problem. At the same time, we have to increase the policy supply. For example, we invite banks to provide with more products to the small and micro enterprises to better serve them. That is also one part of our daily job. And another important thing is the online services for the consultation for prices or transactions. That is also important for the risk aversion. And to promote investment and facilitation of cross-border trade, since 2019, we have put in place this platform for financial services. We will add up some more scenarios apart from the 5 scenarios above mentioned. For example, for the shipping services and also for the bills application and for the coverage of the insurance products. Those products can be sometimes very detailed products, but they are all the result of analysis after studying the real demands of the people. We will stick to this path. We will also encourage more small to medium-sized of banks to join this pilot program. We will also enlarge the pilot coverage of the foreign debt experimentation in our services to the small and micro enterprises. How we can better serve them, that is my answer to your question. Good morning, I'm from the Xinhua News Agency. According to the Central Conference on the Economic Performance, we have again put the focus on the stability. So what would be the following guidance for the 2022 economic operation and foreign exchange management? Thank you very much for your question. By the turn of the year, we always do the review of the last year's work performance and also make the forecast. This year, we will continue to apply the results of the Central Conference on Economic Work and put stability on top of our agenda, open a new chapter in the development, start a new paradigm of development, deepen our reform in the foreign exchange market, and better serve the real economy, and support the stability of the national finance and macro economy. The role of the state administration of foreign exchange can be explained in the following 4 aspects. First of all, to deepen the reform and opening up in the foreign exchange sector. There are some details. First of all, for the capital side, we will continue to open up the capital-related areas. For example, the equity PE, cross-border investment pilot programs will be enlarged. For the QFLP, their investment and management, and the QDLP, their operation and management. We will continue to enlarge the coverage of the pilot program, and also under the same category of capital, facilitate further the external loans, the registration and the coverage of the pilot program. We will start with the contracting with enterprises in some places as the pilot program, and it will first of all be managed by local banks. And thirdly, the issuing of the stocks of foreign institutions in the domestic market. That is a new area, relatively new area for us to see. And fourthly, cross-border enterprises, multinational enterprises, foreign exchange pool. So that is for the first aspect, high level of opening up of the capital. And secondly, for the current account, we'll continue to make the innovation and reform and opening up of the current foreign exchange to enlarge the pilot program of facilitation of foreign exchange for enterprises that are holding a very good record of performance. They will be first of all engaged in this pilot program. We invite and mobilize the banks to do that. We also support new forms of businesses. We also make sure that during the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing, there's sufficient supply of foreign exchange. And third aspect, foreign exchange market, we build up a more complete foreign exchange market and provide more derivatives of the foreign exchange to respond to the need of the people. And fourth, to support recent opening up and to apply the programs of pilot. So those are the four major aspects for this year. And we also have to stay alert against the possible blows from the international market. Just now, during our interactions, from your questions and my answers, we can already see some signs. For example, the tightening of the Federal Reserve. A lot of information should be considered. And in the new year, in 2021, we have to continue to stay vigilant against possible blows of the risks, strengthen our supervision, and remain in guard against the major risks, outbreaks. And we will continue to make our toolboxes more complete, and also to strengthen the prediction, regulation, and macro prudence. For the major market entities, we have to avoid the effect of the sheep group. The third measure for our application of the conference decision, the micromanagement. For the law enforcement, we have to ensure the cross-cyclical consistency and also the stability. The management of the authenticity of the foreign exchange service, the nature is authentic, and the service should be highly efficient. And we have zero tolerance for the law and regulation violating actions. And the fourth priority of our work is to improve our regulation of the foreign exchange reserve. And based on the market, we have to increase our capacity of daily management, make sure that foreign exchange can gain value and also stay in a very stable status. Next question, please. Thank you. I'm from China Daily. During the 2022 Winter Olympics, there will be a lot of foreign visitors coming to the country. What are the measures you're about to take to ensure the conveniences about the foreign exchange? Just now, I've mentioned this topic. To guarantee the convenience of use of foreign exchange during the Winter Olympics. Winter Olympics is an important event for Beijing, and Moreover, for the whole country, last year, by December, our administration has published a document about the policies to guarantee the use of foreign exchange during the games. We will increase the facilitation level of the use of foreign exchange during the games. The guidelines go like that. On the basis of the closed loop of management, we have to increase the convenience for people to use the foreign exchange. First of all, we have to respect the rules of strengthened control against the COVID-19. The Bank of China will open a green corridor for the use of foreign exchange, for the opening of the account, for the conversion, and also for the transfer of the capital. We will offer more conveniences. We have published several policies already. First of all, we have streamlined the whole process. For example, in a certain area, the procedure for the application and the approval of the documents have been streamlined. We also have some automatic service machines in place to help people. All those measures in place can make the use of foreign exchange much more convenient than ever during the games. Secondly, the convenience in setting up a personal account. For example, for foreign institutions to set up a current account for the tax rebate services and other services. And thirdly, innovative measures in place. More banks, with the precondition of controllable risks, can make it possible for the foreigners to use the mobile payments. And fourth, a special treatment for some special cases. During the games, for some emergencies or for some special circumstances, we will give special policies to cope with the need. With all the above-mentioned policies, we hope that we can contribute to the conveniences of use of foreign exchange for foreigners coming to China to join the games. And this is also our part of contribution to the successful organization of the games in the country. The last question for today, considering the limitation of the time. Thank you very much. And from the first financial news, as is mentioned before, for the second half of 2021, there is a slight appreciation of RMB, and recently we have passed the ceiling of 6.34 against US dollars. What is the factor behind that appreciation, and what about the future tendency of development? Thank you very much for this question. The foreign exchange rate remains a hot topic, even though today we can see greater flexibility of the RMB. The currency remains very stable. Since the beginning of this year, there's only a moderate increase of 0.5. Recently, the national economy has continued to recover. Exportation has also registered a very strong resilience. According to the data of the customs, import-export surplus has an annual increase of 30%. So due to that good expectation of the market and also the strong surplus of the trade, we can see the growth of the value of RMB. The moderate appreciation of RMB against the US dollars can also be partly explained by some seasonal factors. Because when we approach the Lunar New Year of China, a lot of enterprises in China, they have to pay the salaries and bonuses to their employees. So they have a stronger willingness for the selling and settlement of foreign exchange. So that is a phenomenon before the Spring Festival, and that is true every year around this time. And recently, the central bank, during the press conference, has also shared with the press their opinions. We agree with them. China has this floating interest rate management system pegged to a basket of currencies. In the future, interest rate of exchange rate of RMB will continue to be impacted by the external environment, and we can continue to see the two-way volatility. And of course, for the next period to come, either appreciation or depreciation can be possible. This is also a demonstration of its role as the automatic stabilizer. It can also help us to strike a balance home and abroad. That is my reaction to your question about the foreign exchange rate. Thank you very much for your participation. That is the end of today's press conference. Thank you.